The glow of my phone screen was the only light in the living room, a stark blue rectangle against the deep shadows of 1 in the morning. I was doing what I always did at 1 in the morning, scrolling through nothing, feeling the familiar, hollow ache of a life lived too quietly. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, a sound so constant I only noticed it when I was trying to hear something else. Anything else. Then, the screen lit up with a name that made my thumb freeze mid-scroll. Alex. My neighbor. The man who had occupied a significant and entirely inappropriate amount of my mental real estate for the past 6 months. The message was 3 words, a simple, almost lazy inquiry that sent a jolt through my system that was anything but. You up? My heart did a stupid, frantic little dance against my ribs. It was absurd. He was probably just locked out or needed to borrow sugar for some insomniac baking project. My mind, however, a seasoned scriptwriter of romantic fantasies, immediately leaped to 1,000 other possibilities, each one more unlikely and mortifying than the last. I stared at the blinking cursor in the reply box, my brain a sudden, useless blank. What was the protocol here? Was a simple yes too eager? Was what's up too casual? I was an expert at overthinking. It was my primary skill set, honed over 32 years of avoiding direct human interaction whenever possible. I worked from home as a graphic designer, a job that suited my temperament perfectly. My world was pixels and color codes, a neat, orderly existence contained within the 4 walls of my small bungalow. Alex, on the other hand, was all tangible reality. He was a carpenter, and the sounds of his work, the whine of a saw, the rhythmic tap of a hammer, often drifted through my open windows in the summer, a soundtrack to my quiet life. I saw him coming and going in his beat-up Ford truck, sawdust clinging to his jeans, a pencil tucked behind his ear. He was broad-shouldered and steady on his feet, with a low, rumbling voice I'd only ever heard in brief, neighborly exchanges over the lawnmower. My phone buzzed again, another message from him. Power's out. My phone's about to die. Relief and disappointment warred within me. It was a practical problem. A completely normal, non-romantic, neighborly dilemma. This was territory I could navigate. I typed back, my fingers feeling clumsy. Yeah, I'm up. Come on over if you need to charge it. My porch light is on. I hit send before I could second-guess the wording. Then, a wave of panic. My house. I looked around at the dim shapes of my living room. There was a stack of books teetering on the coffee table, a day-old mug stained with the ghost of black coffee, and a throw blanket crumpled on the sofa where I'd been cocooned for hours. It was lived in, but through the filter of my anxiety, it looked like a disaster zone. I scrambled off the couch, kicking off my worn slippers and frantically plumping cushions. It was a pointless, reflexive gesture. He was coming over to use an electrical outlet, not to perform a home inspection. I ran a hand through my hair, knowing it was a mess. I was wearing an old, soft t-shirt and a pair of faded flannel pants. It was my official uniform for loneliness. There was no time to change, no time to do anything but stand in the middle of my living room and listen. And wait. The sound of his footsteps on my gravel driveway was unmistakable. Heavy, even, and sure. Each crunch of stone seemed to echo the frantic thumping in my chest. I took a deep breath, trying to slow my racing pulse. Just a neighbor. Just a power outlet. This was simple. He knocked twice, a solid, confident rap on the wood. I walked to the door, my hand hesitating on the knob for a fraction of a second. I was opening the door to my quiet, controlled world and letting him in. It felt significant. It felt terrifying. I pulled the door open. And there he was. Alex. He filled the doorframe, somehow larger and more real than he was from a distance. The dim glow of the porch light caught the sharp line of his jaw and the slight scruff that shadowed it. He was wearing a simple gray Henley that stretched across his chest and shoulders, and his dark hair was slightly damp, as if he'd run his hands through it. He held his phone and a charging cable in one hand, and his expression was a mixture of apology and mild amusement. Hey, he said, his voice that same low rumble I knew, but softer now in the quiet of the night. Sorry to bother you this late. My own voice felt stuck in my throat. I managed a small, tight smile. No, it's fine. Come in. He stepped across the threshold, and the air in my small entryway shifted. He brought the outside in with him, the cool night air, the faint, clean scent of rain, and something else, something that was just him. A subtle, warm mix of sawdust, soap, and something vaguely like cinnamon. It was a scent that spoke of work and warmth and solidness, and it was dizzyingly, overwhelmingly present in my space. "Whole block seems to be dark," he said, glancing back out the door before I closed it. "Must have been that wind." "Probably," I mumbled, locking the deadbolt. The click of the lock sounded unnaturally loud. He was inside. Alex was inside my house. My mind was having trouble processing the fact. He turned from the door, and his eyes did a slow, casual sweep of the living room. I felt a blush creep up my neck, suddenly self-conscious of every book's spine, every picture frame. I saw my space through his eyes, quiet, a little sterile, maybe even lonely. "Outlet's right there," I said, pointing to the wall behind the armchair. I was trying to sound casual, helpful, the helpful neighbor. He nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Thanks, Leo. You're a lifesaver." He knew my name. Of course, he knew my name. We'd introduced ourselves months ago when he first moved in. But hearing him say it, right here in my living room, felt different. It felt intimate. He walked over to the outlet, his worn leather boots making almost no sound on my hardwood floors. I watched the way he moved, the easy economy of his motion as he crouched down to plug in the charger. The fabric of his Henley pulled taut across his back, outlining the strong, defined muscles there. I had watched him haul lumber and swing a hammer, but seeing that strength up close, contained within the soft lighting of my home, was another thing entirely. I quickly looked away, feeling like a voyeur. My gaze landed on my own hands, which were clenched into fists at my sides. I forced them to relax. "Can I get you something?" I asked, my voice coming out a little strained. "Water? Or, I think I have some tea." He stood up, turning to face me. His phone was now tethered to my wall, its screen glowing as it began to charge. He leaned his shoulder against the wall, crossing his arms over his chest. The pose was relaxed, but his eyes were watchful. He had incredibly dark eyes, I realized. In the dim light, they seemed to hold all the shadows of the room. "I'm good," he said. "Don't want to put you out. I can just wait here for a bit, if that's cool." "It's cool," I said quickly. Too quickly. "I mean, it's fine. Make yourself comfortable." An awkward silence descended. I stood there, rooted to the spot, while he leaned against my wall. It was my house, my space, but I suddenly felt like an intruder in it. He was the one who seemed at ease, perfectly comfortable in the quiet. I, on the other hand, felt like my entire nervous system was crackling with electricity. Every second that stretched out between us felt like an hour. My mind raced, searching for something to say, some topic of conversation that wouldn't sound completely idiotic. The weather? The power outage? His phone. He broke the silence first. "You're always up late," he said. It wasn't a question. It was an observation. My breath caught. "Oh, yeah? I'm a night owl. I see your light on sometimes when I get home," he continued, his voice still low and even. He pushed off the wall and took a few steps closer, stopping by the edge of the area rug. He gestured vaguely toward my desk in the corner, which was cluttered with sketches and a large monitor. "Working." "Sometimes," I admitted, my eyes darting from his face to my desk and back again. Mostly just thinking. It was a lame, pretentious-sounding answer, but it was the truth. He nodded slowly, his gaze thoughtful. He wasn't looking at my desk anymore. He was looking at me. It was a direct, unnerving sort of look, not unkind, but deeply assessing. I felt stripped bare by it, as if he could see right through my flimsy attempts at normalcy and into the anxious, yearning mess underneath. I had the sudden, powerful urge to look away, to break the connection, but I forced myself to hold his gaze. "What do you think about?" he asked. The question was so simple, so direct, that it disarmed me completely. Nobody ever asked me that. My clients asked about deadlines and font choices. The cashier at the grocery store asked if I wanted paper or plastic. But no one asked what I thought about in the dead of night. "Everything," I said, and a small, humorless laugh escaped me. "Nothing. The usual." He didn't press. He just watched me, a faint, unreadable expression on his face. He took another step, closing the distance between us until he was standing just a few feet away. The warmth radiating from him was a tangible thing. I could feel it on my skin. That scent of sawdust and soap was stronger now, and my senses felt overwhelmed. "Well," he said, his voice dropping even lower, almost a murmur. Thanks for letting me crash your quiet time. He gestured toward the sofa. Mind if I sit? My legs cramping up from standing. Oh, God, of course, I said, mortified that I hadn't offered him a seat. I felt like the world's worst host. Please, sit down. He moved to the couch and sat, not in the center, but on the cushion closest to the armchair, the one I usually occupied. He sank into the cushions with a soft sigh, stretching his long legs out in front of him. He looked like he belonged there. The sight was so jarringly domestic that my brain stuttered. Alex on my couch, in my living room, at 1:30 in the morning. I remained standing, hovering uselessly. You can sit too, you know, he said, a hint of laughter in his tone. He patted the cushion next to him. It's your couch. My heart hammered against my ribs. Sitting next to him felt like a monumental step, a line being crossed. But not sitting would be even more awkward. I was trapped. Taking a slow, deliberate breath, I walked over and sat down on the far end of the sofa, leaving a careful, calculated 3 feet of space between us. It was a chasm of my own making, a buffer zone against the overwhelming proximity of him. He noticed, of course. A small, wry smile touched his lips for a second before vanishing. He didn't say anything about it, though. He just leaned his head back against the cushions and closed his eyes. And so we sat, in silence. The only sounds were the hum of the fridge and the soft whisper of his breathing. I didn't dare look at him. I focused on a spot on the opposite wall, tracing the faint cracks in the plaster with my eyes. I was acutely aware of every inch of him. The way his knee was bent, the relaxed drape of his hand on his thigh, the steady rise and fall of his chest. The space between us felt charged, humming with a tension that was entirely of my own creation. Or was it? I risked a glance. His eyes were still closed, his dark lashes resting against his skin. He looked tired. There were faint lines around his eyes that I hadn't noticed from a distance. For a man who seemed so perpetually capable and energetic during the day, he looked almost vulnerable in that moment. The thought was so unexpected it made me catch my breath. His eyes opened, as if he'd felt my gaze on him. He turned his head on the cushion, and his dark eyes met mine. The world seemed to shrink to the space on that couch. You're thinking again, he said softly. I couldn't deny it. I just gave a small, helpless shrug. He studied my face for a long moment. I felt like a specimen under a microscope. I wondered what he saw. Did he see the loneliness? The years of quiet desperation? Or just a weird, socially awkward neighbor who didn't know how to act when a guest was in his house? You know, he began, shifting his body to face me more directly, propping himself up on one elbow. The movement ate up half the distance between us. My breath hitched. I didn't just come over for the power outlet. My blood went cold, then hot. My mind went completely blank. Every pre-written script, every possible scenario, evaporated. There was only the here and now, the low light of the room, and the weight of his gaze. Oh, I managed to squeak out. My voice was a thin, reedy thing. He held my gaze, his expression serious now. The playful amusement was gone, replaced by an intensity that made it hard to breathe. My power's not out, Leo. The statement hung in the air between us. It was a confession, a deliberate act of deception, and my mind, my overthinking, analytical mind, couldn't process it. Why? Why would he lie about something so simple? The silence stretched, thick and heavy. I could hear the blood pounding in my ears. I just stared at him, my mouth slightly agape. I was searching for the punchline, the joke, but there was no humor in his eyes. There was only a quiet, unnerving sincerity. He watched my confusion, his expression softening slightly. I saw your light on, he said, his voice a low caress. Like I said, I see it a lot. He paused, as if choosing his next words carefully. And I've been wanting to knock on your door for a long time. I am not breathing. I am a statue made of pure, unadulterated panic. My brain is a frantic scramble of white noise. This isn't happening. This is a dream. One of those hyper-realistic dreams that you wake up from feeling disappointed and foolish. He's not really here. He didn't really say that. But the warmth coming off his body is real. The scent of him, that impossible mix of hard work and clean skin, is real. His eyes, dark and steady and fixed on mine, are undeniably real. He's waiting for a response, for some sign that I haven't short-circuited completely. I open my mouth, but no sound comes out. My throat is closed up. He sighs, a soft, quiet sound. It's not a sigh of frustration, but of something else. Resignation, maybe. He pushes himself up from his lounging position, sitting fully upright. The sofa cushion dips with his weight, and I feel myself slide an inch closer to him. An involuntary movement. A betrayal by gravity. "Look," he says, and he runs a hand over the back of his neck, a gesture that seems uncharacteristically uncertain. Maybe this was a mistake. I'm not good at this talking thing. I see you. In your yard, at your window. You're always alone. And you have this look on your face sometimes. Like you're a million miles away. My heart aches. He sees me. The thought is both terrifying and exhilarating. All this time I'd been watching him from the safety of my window, thinking I was invisible. But he had been watching me too. I'm not. I am alone. I finally managed to say, my voice a rough whisper. I like it quiet, it's a lie. A pathetic, transparent lie. I hate the quiet. The quiet is a gaping maw that threatens to swallow me whole most nights. A real smile touches his lips this time. It's small and a little sad. "No, you don't," he says gently. It's not an accusation. It's a statement of fact. And he's right. He's so completely, devastatingly right. He leans forward, resting his forearms on his knees. The space between us is now negligible. I could reach out and touch him without even trying. The air is thick with unspoken words, with years of my own repressed longing. I feel dizzy with it. "I'm not good with words, Leo," he says again, his eyes dropping to my hands, which are twisting themselves into knots in my lap. "I'm better with doing things." My gaze follows his. I look down at my fidgeting hands and force them to be still. I place them flat on the cushion on either side of me, anchoring myself. When I look up again, his eyes are back on mine, and they are burning with an intensity that steals the air from my lungs. He doesn't move. He just watches me, his expression a question. He's given me an opening, a chance to shut this down, to retreat back into my safe, quiet world. I could make a joke, change the subject, ask him if his power is really out. I could pretend I don't understand the current that's arcing between us, so strong I can almost taste the ozone in the air. But I don't want to. For the first time in a very long time, I don't want to be safe. I want to be brave. My heart is a frantic bird beating against the cage of my ribs, but my voice, when it comes, is surprisingly steady. "What kind of things?" I ask. The question hangs there, a fragile bridge I've just built across the chasm between us. It's a terrifying, exhilarating thing to give someone that much power, to ask them to show you what they mean instead of telling you. Alex's breath catches, a small, almost imperceptible sound. A muscle in his jaw tightens. He hadn't expected that, I realize. He had expected me to retreat. My tiny flicker of courage seems to have thrown him off balance. For a brief second, I see a flash of vulnerability in his eyes, a flicker of the same fear that I'm feeling, and it emboldens me. He slowly, deliberately, reaches out his hand. He doesn't try to touch my face or my arm. He lays his hand, palm up, on the cushion between us. It's a simple gesture, an offering. His hand is large and calloused, the knuckles slightly scarred, the nails short and clean. It's a hand that knows how to build things, how to fix things. A capable, steady hand. He says nothing. He just waits. The silence is absolute. This is it. This is the moment of choice. I can leave his hand there, an unanswered question in the space between us. Or I can answer it. My own hand feels cold and clammy. It feels small and useless next to his. It's a hand that knows only the smooth, cold surface of a mouse and the familiar shape of a coffee mug. I lift my hand. It trembles slightly. I watch as if from a great distance as I move it across the cushion and place it in his. The contact is electric. His skin is warm and slightly rough against my own. His fingers, strong and sure, curl around mine, engulfing my hand in a grip that is both gentle and possessively firm. A shudder runs through me, a full-body tremor that starts in my toes and ends at the roots of my hair. He doesn't look at our joined hands. His eyes are still locked on mine. He's searching for something in my face, for hesitation, for regret. I try to keep my expression neutral, but I know he can see it all. The fear, yes, but also the dawning, terrifying hope. He gives my hand a small, reassuring squeeze. "This," he says, his voice a low, rough whisper that seems to vibrate right through me. This kind of thing. We sit like that for what feels like an eternity, our hands clasped together on my worn sofa cushion, the world outside silent and dark. He doesn't move closer. He doesn't let go. He just holds my hand and looks at me, and in that simple, profound connection, years of my carefully constructed walls begin to crumble into dust. The quiet I had claimed to love is filled with the sound of his breathing, the feeling of his pulse against my palm. It's no longer an empty quiet. It's a shared one. He eventually broke the spell, his thumb stroking slowly over the back of my hand. The simple, repetitive motion was incredibly soothing, calming the frantic flutter in my chest. "Your hands are cold," he observed quietly. I run cold. I stammered, feeling foolish. He brought my hand up, lifting it from the couch. He held it between both of his own, rubbing it gently, his calloused palms creating a pleasant friction against my skin. The gesture was so openly tender, so unexpectedly caring, that it made my throat tighten with emotion. No one had ever held my hand like this, as if it were something precious, as if it were something worth warming up. "Better?" he asked after a moment, his voice still low. I could only nod, incapable of speech. I was mesmerized by the sight of his large, work-roughened hands holding my own. There was such a contrast between us. He was all solid earth, and I didn't know what I was. Air, maybe. Something intangible and fleeting. He let go of my hand with one of his and gently touched my chin, tilting my face up slightly. My eyes, which had been fixed on our hands, were forced to meet his again. "You're shaking," he said. "I'm okay," I lied. I was not okay. I was coming apart at the seams. "Leo," he said my name with a quiet authority that made me stop breathing. "It's all right to be scared. I am too." His confession stunned me. "Alex? Scared?" He was the most self-assured person I had ever met. He strode through the world with a quiet confidence that I could only dream of. To hear him admit to fear, to see the proof of it in the tense line of his mouth, shattered the last of my composure. A single, traitorous tear escaped my eye and traced a hot path down my cheek. I was mortified. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to will the others away. I hated crying. I hated the vulnerability of it, the loss of control. I felt his thumb, warm and slightly rough, brush away the tear. My eyes snapped open. He was closer now, his face just inches from mine. His expression was one of intense concentration, mixed with a deep, heart-stopping tenderness. "Don't," he whispered. "Don't hide." He didn't kiss me. Not then. He just held my gaze, his thumb stroking my cheek, letting me sit with my own vulnerability. He was giving me space to fall apart, and at the same time, he was the anchor holding me together. It was the kindest thing anyone had ever done for me. The wave of emotion passed, receding as quickly as it had come, leaving me feeling raw and exposed, but strangely calm. The shaking subsided. My breathing evened out. "Sorry," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "Don't be," he said immediately. "There's nothing to be sorry for." He let his hand fall from my face, but he kept hold of my other hand, his fingers still laced with mine. "I've wanted to do this for a long time. Sit here with you. I'm not a poet." I didn't know the words. "You didn't need them," I said, and the truth of the statement surprised me. His presence, his actions, had spoken more clearly than any eloquent speech ever could. He gave me a small, relieved smile. "Good. That's good." He leaned back against the cushions again, pulling me with him slightly, so that our shoulders were now brushing. He didn't let go of my hand. He rested our joined hands on his thigh, a casual, proprietary gesture that sent a fresh wave of heat through me. We fell back into a comfortable silence. This time, it wasn't awkward or tense. It was peaceful. The room was warm, filled with the soft lamplight and the quiet sound of our breathing. Outside, the world was asleep, but in here, in my small living room, something new and fragile was waking up. I found myself studying his profile in the dim light. The straight line of his nose, the firm set of his mouth, the way his dark lashes curled just slightly at the tips. I had watched this man from a distance for months, creating a fantasy version of him in my head. The reality of him, sitting here next to me, holding my hand, was so much better. He was quieter than I'd imagined, more thoughtful, and there was a gentleness to him that I never would have guessed at. "What are you thinking about now?" he asked, his voice a soft rumble beside me. He didn't turn to look at me, just kept his eyes forward. I hesitated for a second, then decided on the truth. "You," I said. I felt his fingers tighten around mine. He turned his head, and his eyes met mine. There was a question in them. "I was thinking," I continued, my voice gaining a bit of confidence, "that you're not what I expected." A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "Oh yeah? What did you expect?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Someone louder, I guess. More simple." It sounded like an insult, but it wasn't meant to be. He seemed to understand. He chuckled, a low, warm sound that vibrated through the couch. "Simple, huh? Because I work with my hands." "No, not like that," I said quickly, feeling my cheeks flush. "Just, you always seem so sure of yourself. So straightforward." "I am," he said. "About most things. Building a deck, framing a wall. I know what I'm doing. This," he squeezed my hand again, "this is not that. This is new territory." The admission hung in the air, a shared confession of inexperience and uncertainty. It leveled the playing field between us. He might have been the one to make the first move, the one to cross the lawn and knock on my door, but he was just as lost as I was. The realization was strangely comforting. "Me too," I whispered. He held my gaze for a long, searching moment. The air between us grew thick and charged again, but this time it wasn't with anxiety. It was with anticipation, a slow, simmering heat that had been building since the moment he stepped through my door. I watch his eyes. They are so dark, a deep, rich brown that seems to pull me in. I see the question there, the same one he's been asking all night with his presence, with his touch. And I see something else now, a reflection of my own yearning. He wants this. Whatever this is, he wants it as much as I do. My gaze drops to his mouth. It's a beautifully shaped mouth, the lower lip slightly fuller than the top. I wonder what it would feel like. The thought is so sudden, so bold, that it shocks me. I've spent months fantasizing about this man, but my fantasies have always been vague and romanticized. This is different. This is a specific, physical desire, and it's terrifying. He sees where I'm looking. I know he does. A subtle shift in his expression, a slight parting of his lips. He's not moving. He's waiting. He's letting me set the pace. He's giving me all the control, and it's the most dizzying, powerful feeling I've ever experienced. My heart is a drum against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. It's the only sound in the universe. I can do this. I can be brave for one more second. I lean in. It's a small movement, just a few inches. But it's everything. It's the answer to the question. It's the closing of a distance I once thought was insurmountable. He meets me halfway. His free hand comes up to cup the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair. His touch is firm, steadying. And then his mouth is on mine. The first touch is soft, tentative, a gentle pressure of lips against lips. It's a question. Is this okay? It's not like the kisses in movies, full of fire and desperate passion. It's quiet, and it's hesitant, and it's the most breathtakingly real thing I have ever felt. There's a faint taste of coffee on his lips, and the rough scrape of his evening stubble against my skin is an electrifying sensation. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, and my lips part slightly. It's all the invitation he needs. He deepens the kiss, his mouth moving over mine with a slow, deliberate confidence that makes my knees feel weak. This is not hesitant anymore. This is a kiss of certainty. A kiss that says, I've been wanting to do this for a very long time. His hand at the back of my neck tightens its grip, pulling me closer, while our other hands are still clasped tightly between us. My entire body is humming, every nerve ending alive and singing. The world outside my front door, with its power outages and silent streets, ceases to exist. There is only this couch, this man, and the overwhelming, undeniable rightness of this moment. He pulls back slowly, his forehead resting against mine. My eyes are closed. I'm afraid to open them, afraid this will all dissolve into another one of my lonely dreams. His breath is warm on my face. I can feel the steady thud of his heart, or maybe it's my own. I can't tell where one of us ends and the other begins. Leo, he whispers, his voice thick. I open my eyes. He is so close. I can see the flecks of gold in his dark brown eyes. I can see the sincerity and the raw, undisguised emotion on his face. He's not smiling. He looks wrecked, in the best possible way. He looks the way I feel. Hi. I manage to breathe out. It's a stupid thing to say, but it's all I have. A slow, devastating smile spreads across his face. Hi, he breathes back. And then he kisses me again. This time there is no hesitation. It's a kiss of relief, of celebration. It's hungry, and it's deep, and it's full of all the words we didn't know how to say. I bring my free hand up to his chest, my fingers curling into the soft fabric of his shirt, feeling the solid, steady beat of his heart beneath my palm. I am touching him. I am kissing him. Alex, my neighbor. He is real, and he is here, and he is kissing me like he never wants to stop. Eventually, the need for air became a pressing concern. We broke apart, both of us breathing heavily, our faces flushed. He didn't move away, though. He kept his forehead pressed to mine, his hand still tangled in my hair. Our joined hands were now a warm, sweaty mess between us, a testament to the nervous energy that had finally found its release. So, he said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. My power's definitely not out. A laugh bubbled up out of me, a genuine, unrestrained sound of pure joy. It felt foreign in my own quiet house. I kind of figured that out, I said, my voice shaking slightly. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. Just wanted to be clear. Crystal, I confirmed, my own smile feeling wide and unfamiliar on my face. We stayed like that for a long time, just looking at each other, the aftermath of the kiss hanging in the air like a beautiful, shimmering haze. The anxiety was gone. The overthinking part of my brain had finally, blessedly, gone silent. There was only a profound sense of peace, a feeling of arrival, like I had been waiting my whole life to be in this exact spot, on this couch, with this man, and I hadn't even known it. His phone, still plugged into the wall, chirped softly, signaling a full battery. The sound was an intrusion, a reminder of the world outside this room, of the flimsy excuse that had brought him here. Neither of us moved. You should probably, I started to say, though the thought of him leaving sent a sharp pang of disappointment through me. No, he said, his voice firm. He didn't even glance at the phone. His eyes stayed on me. I'm not going anywhere. Unless you want me to. The question was there again. The offer of control. He was constantly checking in, making sure I was okay, making sure this was what I wanted. It was so respectful, so deeply considerate, that it made my heart ache. I don't want you to go, I said, and the words came out without a trace of hesitation. It was the truest thing I had said all night. Good, he breathed, a look of profound relief washing over his face. He leaned in and gave me another kiss, this one slow and sweet and full of promise. When he pulled away, he finally untangled his hand from mine and wrapped his arm around my shoulders, pulling me against his side. I went willingly, letting my head rest on his shoulder. It was a perfect fit. His arm was a solid, warm weight around me, and his familiar scent enveloped me. I closed my eyes and just breathed him in. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I didn't feel alone in my own house. I felt safe. I felt home. We didn't talk much after that. There was no need. We just sat there on the couch, tangled up together, as the clock on the wall ticked silently past 2, then 3 in the morning. At some point, he reached over and turned off the single lamp I had on, plunging the room into a comfortable darkness, lit only by the faint moonlight filtering through the windows. He was right. I didn't like the quiet. But this was different. This was a quiet filled with presence, with warmth, with the steady, reassuring beat of another person's heart next to mine. This was a quiet I could learn to love. I must have drifted off at some point, my head on his shoulder, his arm a secure weight around me, because the next thing I knew, the room was filled with the soft, gray light of dawn. I blinked, disoriented. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was or why my neck was stiff. Then it all came rushing back. Alex, the text, the kiss. My eyes snapped open. I was still on the couch, but I was alone. A thick, knitted blanket I didn't remember getting was tucked around me. The spot beside me was empty, the cushion cool to the touch. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. He was gone. Of course, he was gone. What had I expected? That he would just be here in the morning, making coffee? It was a late-night mistake. A moment of shared loneliness that had gotten out of hand. The harsh light of day had come, and he had retreated back to his own life, leaving me with a crumpled blanket and the ghost of his scent. My brain, my old, familiar, overthinking brain kicked into high gear, supplying me with a dozen different reasons for his departure, each one more humiliating than the last. He regretted it. He was embarrassed. He thought I was pathetic. I sat up, the blanket pooling in my lap. The house was utterly silent. It was the old quiet again. The empty quiet. The hollow ache in my chest was back, sharper and more painful than before. It was one thing to be lonely when you had never known anything different. It was another thing entirely to have that loneliness filled, however briefly, and then to have it handed back to you, magnified. I saw his phone charger still plugged into the wall, the cord lying in a neat coil on the floor. He'd forgotten it. Or maybe he'd left it on purpose, a reason to come back. No, that was stupid. That was wishful thinking. He'd just forgotten it in his haste to escape. I buried my face in my hands, a wave of shame washing over me. I had been so stupidly hopeful. I had let him in, not just into my house, but past all my defenses. I had let him see the real, vulnerable me. And he had run. The smell of coffee cut through my spiral of self-pity. I lifted my head, confused. The scent was unmistakable. Rich, dark, and definitely brewing right here in my own house. I never used a timer on my coffee pot. I slowly got to my feet, my joints protesting. I pulled the blanket around my shoulders like a shield and padded cautiously toward the kitchen. The light over the sink was on, casting a warm, yellow glow. And standing at my counter, his back to me, was Alex. He was wearing the same clothes as last night, but he looked different. He looked like he belonged there. He was pouring coffee into 2 mugs, my favorite chipped blue one, and the plain white one I kept for guests I never had. He moved around my small kitchen with a quiet, easy familiarity, as if he'd been making coffee here for years. My heart, which I thought had plummeted to the floor, did a slow, hopeful somersault. He must have heard me, because he turned his head, a mug in each hand. A slow, warm smile spread across his face when he saw me standing there, wrapped in a blanket, my hair a disaster. It wasn't a smile of pity or amusement. It was fond. "Morning," he said, his voice a low, sleep-gravelly rumble. "I figured you might need this." He walked over and handed me the blue mug. My fingers brushed against his as I took it, and the small spark of contact was just as potent as it had been hours before. The warmth of the ceramic seeped into my cold hands. I lifted the mug to my face and inhaled the steam, the familiar, comforting scent of my favorite coffee. He'd found the right beans. He'd found the right filters. He had paid attention. "You didn't leave," I said, the words coming out as a surprised whisper. His smile faded slightly, and his expression grew serious. He leaned a hip against the counter, cradling his own mug. "Did you think I would?" I looked down into my coffee, unable to meet his gaze. "I woke up, and you were gone. I went to the bathroom," he said gently. "And you looked so peaceful, I didn't want to wake you. So I made coffee. I hope that's okay." Okay. It was more than okay. It was a lifeline. It was the most thoughtful, reassuring gesture imaginable. The knot of anxiety in my chest began to loosen. "It's okay," I said, finally looking up at him. "Thank you." We stood there for a moment, sipping our coffee in a comfortable silence. The morning sun was streaming through the kitchen window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was all so normal, so domestic, that it felt surreal. Last night felt like a dream, a fever dream of shadows and whispers and earth-shattering kisses. This morning felt real, solid, like the ceramic mug in my hands and the steady presence of the man standing in front of me. "So," he said, breaking the silence. He set his mug down on the counter and took a step closer to me. He reached out and gently took my mug from my hands, placing it beside his. Then he took my hands in his. "About last night," he began, and my stomach did a nervous flip. "Here it comes. It was a mistake speech." But that's not what he said. "I want you to know," he continued, his dark eyes holding mine, his expression completely serious. "That wasn't a one-time thing for me. That wasn't a mistake. It was me, finally getting my act together and doing something I've wanted to do for months." Relief washed over me so powerfully I felt my knees weaken. "Months?" I whispered. He nodded. "Since the day I saw you trying to wrestle that giant flat-pack bookshelf into your house. You were so determined. And you had this little smudge of dirt on your nose. I wanted to walk over and wipe it off. I wanted to talk to you. But I chickened out. I remembered that day. I had felt so foolish, so weak, struggling with that stupid box on my own front lawn. I had been acutely aware of him watching me from his yard. I had assumed he was judging me, laughing at my incompetence. But he had been wanting to help, wanting to talk to me. "I thought you were laughing at me," I confessed. He shook his head, a look of genuine regret on his face. "No, never." I was captivated. "And I've been kicking myself ever since for not saying something then." He squeezed my hands. "I'm not good at this, Leo. I don't know the right way to do things. But I know what I want. And I don't want to go back to just being your neighbor." He was laying it all out. No games, no ambiguity. Just the plain, unvarnished truth. It was terrifying and wonderful. He was giving me the chance to build something with him, something real. The fear was still there, a low hum in the back of my mind. The fear of getting hurt, the fear of not being enough. But for the first time, the hope was louder. "I don't want that either," I said, my voice clear and steady. The smile that broke across his face was like the sun coming out from behind the clouds. It lit up his whole face, reached his eyes, and made my heart feel like it was going to burst. He didn't say anything else. He just leaned in and kissed me. It was a morning kiss, slow and sweet, tasting of coffee and new beginnings. It wasn't a kiss of desperate longing like the night before. It was a kiss of quiet confirmation. A kiss that said, "Yes, this is real. This is happening." When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine, just as he had done hours before. But this time, there was no tremor in my hands, no fear in my heart. There was just a deep, quiet certainty. "So what happens now?" I asked, the question a soft breath between us. He pulled back and looked at me, a playful glint in his eyes. "Now," he said, picking up his coffee mug, "I think we should probably have some breakfast. And then we figure it out. Together. Together." The word echoed in the quiet of my kitchen. It was a word that had been absent from my vocabulary for a very long time. But hearing it from him, seeing the promise of it in his eyes, it didn't sound scary at all. It sounded like everything I had ever wanted. I picked up my own mug and took a sip of the coffee he had made for me. It was perfect, strong and hot, and exactly what I needed. I looked at him, really looked at him, standing here in the morning light of my kitchen, and a feeling of profound gratitude washed over me. He hadn't just charged his phone. He had charged my whole life. "Okay," I said, a real smile spreading across my face. "Together."